The most important thing to know when you're watching top rankings on YouTube for fantasy football is the type of league that you are heading into in 2024. Whether you're in a redraft league or a best ball league or a dynasty league, that will of course affect the rankings on each particular YouTube channel. Today we're going through the top 20 rankings for redraft leagues in 2024 fantasy football. So this just means in your ESPN league with your buddies, or a sleeper league or a Yahoo league that you could just redraft every year. These are the rankings that we're going through today. Starting out with our first tier of guys. My first two, I've got Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson. Now this contrasts to how I feel about taking wide receivers in a best ball format on Underdog, for example. Because since you are in a format, in a traditional redraft league, which has historically been one quarterback, two running back, two wide receiver, one tight end, 1 to 2 flexes, a kicker, and a defense, this is going to raise the values of running backs as opposed to a best ball league, which is always a 3 wide receiver format on Underdog. So the rankings are obviously going to be different for those two types of platforms right here. Since we're going through redraft right now, with Christian McCaffrey, it doesn't change. Christian McCaffrey's the number 1 on best ball. He's the number 1 on redraft for sure. It really doesn't matter what format you're in for 2024 particularly, because we all know if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, he's going to be the best player in fantasy football. It's really not particularly close because the 49ers haven't really said we're going to limit his usage much. They just know that he's too valuable for this team, and it doesn't look like he's slowed down at all last year, so I've got no issues with him. And then Bijan Robinson. I know I'm going to get some pushback on this one for having him above Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb. If you go over to ESPN, you'll see that on their rankings and their live draft trends, Bijan Robinson is behind both Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb. So I'm a little against the grain here. The reason why is because with Bijan Robinson, I believe that he has the ability to be in that same tier as Christian McCaffrey this year. If you look at everything that they've done so far this season, they got rid of Arthur Smith, who was trying to put Bijan in a timeshare when you can see on the screen the efficiency says he didn't need to be in a timeshare based on efficiency. So they get rid of him. They get a defensive coach who all he has said all year, all this offseason, leading into the season is, yeah, we're going to use the you-know-what out of Bijan Robinson. So I just have a lot of faith in Bijan being a great player in fantasy this year. And I think as long as he stays healthy, will be an easy 320, 330 point fantasy score in a half PPR format. Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb at 3 and 4 here, they're in the same tier, because I also do believe that they have the potential to be 300 plus fantasy point scores in a half PPR format. So I think that with Tyreek Hill in particular, the reason that I always put him above CeeDee Lamb is because regardless of what platform, again, if you're playing best ball, if you're playing redraft, I always have Tyreek above CeeDee because I believe in Tyreek's ability to hit more big games than CeeDee Lamb does. I think CeeDee Lamb probably has the more stable floor than Tyreek Hill does, but I see Tyreek getting more big plays because I truly do believe, since there's no other wide receiver option in Dallas that is actually viable, he has no viable wide receiver too. There's going to be so much done to stop CeeDee Lamb this year as opposed to what defenses did last year, because CeeDee hadn't reached that level that he reached last year yet. He's reached that elite level. So every defense knows going into it, we have to stop this guy. We cannot spare any expenses to, and they don't have to because Dallas doesn't have a great second option. Tyreek Hill he has the advantage of having Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle prevents defenses from going all out to stop Tyreek because they know Jalen Waddle can easily burn them deep as well. So I actually do personally believe Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb, the divider right there is that the wide receiver 2 in Miami is just simply better than the wide receiver 1 in Dallas. 5 and 6, the next tier, I've got Breece Hall and Jamar Chase. So with Breece Hall, I think that he really does have a possibility of being in that Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson elite tier for me. The reason I leave him just one tier below is because I don't really necessarily believe in the offense's ability to make him work as much as I do with Atlanta's, for example. I think Atlanta fully commits to Bijan Robinson this year, but I don't really believe that Breece Hall is in the perfect position just quite yet. Breece Hall is an elite talent. He's a fantastic talent at the running back position, and based on what we saw last year without Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers is 70% better, theoretically Breece should be a better player. But I don't know if I feel as comfortable putting Bijan, him in that same tier as Bijan, just from a comfort level perspective, a gut feeling that I can't really back up with numbers here. So I've got Breece Hall at 5, but I still think he's an excellent pick because whether you're in a half PPR or a full PPR league, the guy is still going to get targets. That target number you see on a per game basis, I really don't see that number dropping too terribly much because Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old, coming off an Achilles tear, I think he's going to dump the ball down a lot to Breece Hall. Now, with Jamar Chase in particular, I just think that if we apply a fully healthy season of him and Joe Burrow and even T. Higgins, I think Jamar Chase is an elite option. And I think most people would agree with this, but there are some Jamar Chase detractors that I have talked to personally. I think that with Jamar Chase, what we saw in his rookie year, everybody's been expecting him to kind of replicate it at some point. It hasn't happened because of injuries between him and Joe Burrow. So I think as long as everybody stays healthy in this offense, which is a big if, but we're shooting for upside here in fantasy, and I believe that Jamar Chase does have that upside. Now at number 7 and 8, I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, then Justin Jefferson. Now, I discussed this on my wide receiver rankings video a couple weeks ago. I made the move to say Amon-Ra, I have him ranked higher than Justin Jefferson this year. It's not that I don't think Justin Jefferson's great still. Of course I do. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I like the offense better. I like the situation better with Jared Goff at quarterback. I like his offensive coordinator quite a lot. That Detroit Lions offense has not changed. It's only gotten better. And they really didn't lose anybody. This is just a great situation for Amon-Ra St. Brown, who just got the same type of extension that Justin Jefferson did. So we know that he's going to continue to be a 10 target per game type of guy in an offense that, again, doesn't have an established number 2 wide receiver, but probably doesn't have as much touchdown upside as a guy like Jamar Chase. Now with Justin Jefferson, I think that with Justin Jefferson, when you just take a step back and you look at all things considered, I think Justin Jefferson is still a great player in a very good offense. But of course, we have the rookie quarterback issue. Now, I have a personal belief Jordan Addison is wide receiver 2 will have a great season. I have him ranked way above consensus, which also should let you know that I don't really have a ton of concerns with Justin Jefferson personally. I think that Justin Jefferson, the problem that he may see this year is because of the quarterback issue. So I think maybe that touchdown number is what we need to be concerned about with Justin Jefferson. But that being said, I really like Justin Jefferson. Of course, he's still a great option in fantasy this year. At 9 and 10, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor at the running back position right here. Now with Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that, again, it really lines up a lot with Amon-Ra St. Brown in that Detroit offense, being that the quarterback is still in place, the offensive line is still fantastic. According to Pro Football Network, they have a top 3 offensive line. They're fantastic. They're only getting stronger on that offense as a whole. So with Jahmyr Gibbs, if you look at the back half of the season with him in particular, and if you applied that back half of the season to a full season, this is going to be a guy who's going to be a top 5 running back easily, even with David Montgomery still being involved, which he will be for sure. But I think that Jahmyr Gibbs himself has more upside than David Montgomery, obviously, because he's getting targets involved as well. And especially how efficient this offense runs, I see Jahmyr Gibbs as a top 10 guy overall in a redraft type of league because the upside is there. And I think just based on the amount of touches he'll get per game between targets and rushes, is going to give him a really stable floor for you. And then with Jonathan Taylor, this is one of my favorite guys in fantasy right now, best ball and redraft, because I have him ranked above where consensus has him ranked. Jonathan Taylor is coming into the season with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, who is a fantastic rusher and just didn't get all of the notoriety last year because he wasn't there for a full season. The sample size he gave us lets us know that he's a dual threat who is a very serious dual threat. And there is history linking running quarterbacks to very efficient running backs in the NFL. Now, it's also worth noting, because when I discuss Saquon Barkley, we'll talk about this, it's also worth noting that rushing quarterbacks consistently lower the target share of a running back out of the backfield. But the problem I have with Saquon, that I don't with Jonathan Taylor, is that Saquon is very reliant on targets. You can see the numbers on the screen. Jonathan Taylor, even if he loses a little bit more targets per game, it doesn't affect him very much because his targets per game in 2023 were already pretty low, and he was still basically around 15 fantasy points per game and half PPR. I think Jonathan Taylor has a bounce back season with a full healthy year. Definitely going to get you at least 11 to 1,200 yards rushing. And by the way, that's one of my favorite lines to take advantage of on Underdog right now. Jonathan Taylor, higher than 1,075.5 rushing yards in 2024 is definitely going to be a lock pick for me because of the great offensive line, the great offensive coach with Shane Steichen, and with the elite rushing quarterback that will increase his efficiency. So join Underdog today if you haven't already, using code FFN, and they will give you $250 in bonus cash, so you can make some other picks as well to line yourself up with more upside to win big on this Jonathan Taylor line right here. Now, dropping down to our next tier right here, I've got Puka Nacua and AJ Brown. They're really back-to-back with me, as well as Garrett Wilson is really. I think that all three of these guys are just not in that Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown tier. They're all going to be very good wide receivers, especially to get at the back of the first round, early second round of your drafts in a redraft league. But I don't think that any of them have the ceiling to be the wide receiver one like I do with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all those other guys. They just don't have that ceiling for me because I think the problem I see is that we haven't seen it yet. With Puka, obviously a great rookie year. I think he builds off that for sure. Problem I have with Puka personally is that he has the Matt Stafford issue with a quarterback that is asking for more money and the team refuses to give it to him. Well, the reason is because he's closer to 40 than he is to 30, and he's dealt with a lot of injuries. So last year, one of that was his peak year, and he really starts going downhill. That's my problem with Puka. But I obviously see him as a target hog in that offense because I don't really worry about Cooper Kupp. AJ Brown in particular, I think that AJ Brown's going to be fine. I think AJ Brown, when you apply everything last year, very good player, but obviously had the regression in the back half of the season as everybody in Philadelphia did. I think Philly rebounds. AJ Brown's a very good player in fantasy again, but I don't love them quite as much. And then Garrett Wilson, I think we're all just waiting for the breakout. We're all just waiting on him to align with Aaron Rodgers, and as long as Rodgers can remain healthy, Garrett Wilson is going to be great in fantasy. And we'll see what we've never seen from him before in 2024. As long as Rodgers is there, because even a 75% Aaron Rodgers is better than what Garrett Wilson's had to deal with throughout his entire career. I think we all agree with that right there. It's just impossible not to see upside for Garrett Wilson, like in this range, if Aaron Rodgers is not healthy. So I'll bank on Rodgers being there. Got Garrett Wilson at 13. 14, 15, and 16. I've got Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry. You could rank these guys however you want to. It wouldn't really bother me personally too much. I've got it pretty firmly set right here because I think with Josh Jacobs, again, I'm very much higher on consensus on Josh Jacobs. And the reason I'm higher on consensus with Josh Jacobs in particular is because I think the offense we have to take into account is just really strong in Green Bay. Jordan Love has a rocket ship level trajectory, and that offensive line, again, is fantastic, and they're young too. They're really young. All their pieces are in place. All their weapons are in place. Their offensive coach, Matt LaFleur, is fantastic. So Josh Jacobs just comes into an immediately better situation in Green Bay than he ever had in Las Vegas. And I'm not saying that we're going to see another 2022 level season from Jacobs, but definitely going to be a 1,000 to 1,100 yard rusher, possibility of 10 touchdowns in the season. I think Josh Jacobs has a very high ceiling. And with Saquon Barkley, like I said earlier, I am lower than him on consensus. I have not been shy about that this whole offseason. I think Saquon is a little bit overvalued, but I will not, in a redraft league, I'm definitely more willing to take Saquon because, again, the value of running backs is definitely higher than the value of running backs in a best ball format. Saquon Barkley in a redraft format, definitely going to be a good pick. The problem I have with him, like I said, rushing quarterbacks, experience consistently across the board. Running backs with rushing quarterbacks just get less targets. And Saquon Barkley, very dependent on targets last year. Now, his efficiency was lower. I think it will be better because of Philadelphia's offensive line and just their offense as a whole because, again, rushing quarterbacks increase the efficiency of running backs. The problem I have with Saquon is I don't believe he'll have as many rushing touchdowns this year because I don't believe that Jalen Hurts is going to allow him to get that, because there's also history linking less touchdowns with certain running quarterbacks that run at the goal line, guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. The reason they're running at the goal line is because they're big and their coaching staff has confidence that they could get in with their big frame and not get injured. The tush push had a 93.5% success rate last year whenever the Eagles used it. Do you think they're going to stop using it? Absolutely not. They use it because it's successful. So I think Saquon will not fulfill the touchdown totals that everybody has in mind for him. Derrick Henry at 16, I love this situation. And I know, like, with Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, it might sound a little crazy since I am lower on Saquon with a rushing quarterback, but not as low on Henry and Jonathan Taylor. The type of running quarterback that Derrick Henry has in particular, Lamar Jackson doesn't run at the goal line. That's a run in space type of guy to make you look silly over the middle of the field and gets out of bounds whenever he's about to face contact. He doesn't run at the goal line. So Derrick Henry behind that offensive line, I think easily could finish first in touchdowns at the running back position. Honestly, I think Derrick Henry has a very high ceiling and a relatively stable floor, although I will say I'm not confident in him getting the workload that he got in Tennessee as far as getting 20 to 25 rushing attempts per game. I think those days are probably done with Derrick Henry, especially with a running quarterback now, but I do think the ceiling here with Derrick Henry is just simply too high not to take in this range. 17 and 18, I've got the rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. and Devon Achane. Now, with Marvin Harrison Jr. in particular, I love this fit so much in Arizona. It's been a long time since I've had a rookie ranked this high in my rankings at the wide receiver position. I think it's probably the highest I've had a rookie wide receiver ranked heading into the particular season. I think it all just lines up. Kyler Murray coming back off the ACL tear. Clearly needs a wide receiver one. Marvin Harrison Jr. immediately offers him not only a wide receiver one, a true wide receiver one. He also offers him the best wide receiver one he's had. I love DeAndre Hopkins, but with Kyler Murray, that was not DeAndre Hopkins' prime. Marvin Harrison Jr. steps into his prime with Kyler Murray. It is going to immediately see 120 to 130 targets in 2024. And if that happens, Marvin Harrison Jr. is more than likely a top 12 wide receiver. I think at this range right here, I'm very comfortable taking him here and in best ball leagues. I'm a big fan of Marvin Harrison this year. And then Devon Achane, I think the ceiling, again, just simply too high for me to go with a guy like Isaiah Pacheco or Travis Etienne in this range. I think he just simply has a higher ceiling because of the offense that he's on and what we saw last year with Devon Achane. I think that the injuries obviously played a factor into him not finishing higher, and I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about Devon Achane getting injured for more time this year because he does have a smaller frame. But apparently he's put on weight, he's put on muscle this offseason, which is a great step. I think Devon Achane, the running system in Miami is just too strong. It's so efficient. It's so well run. I think Devon Achane definitely going to be the lead back as opposed to Raheem Mostert this year. So I think Devon Achane, the ceiling is just simply too high. And then rounding it out, 19 and 20, Kyren Williams and Nico Collins here. So Kyren Williams in particular definitely could easily be ranked above Devon Achane. Easily could be ranked above him. I would listen to an argument ranking him above Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. But I think for me personally, I've discussed this on my last running back rankings video. For me personally, I'm a little bit worried about Blake Corum with the draft capital that he got and Todd McVay's history of being very surprising with running back usage. So it's a little bit unnerving with the Los Angeles Rams, but I do ultimately believe in Kyren because he did not just have some normal run-of-the-mill good season at running back. He was spectacular for them. I just can't see them relinquishing a ton of touches to him, although I do think they will relinquish a little bit to keep him fresh because he was injured for a little bit. I just don't see a major downtick in volume, and I think that, if anything, it probably helps to become more efficient. And then Nico Collins to round it out at 20. I could have gone with Chris Olave, who's got a safer floor than him, but I don't think he has the higher ceiling. Could have gone with a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. Don't think he has as high of a ceiling. Stephon Diggs. I don't think he has as high of a ceiling as Nico Collins does. Nico Collins is the younger player between him and Diggs. He just got the bag from Houston. $50 million guaranteed on a $75 million deal. Nico Collins is the real deal in Houston. Now, I will say, definitely concerned with the targets that he got last year. Only he didn't even have 110 targets last year. So how likely is it that he gets 120 targets this year with Stephon Diggs in the fold? More unlikely that he sees a tremendous jump in targets here. But I think on this offense with CJ Stroud, I think they take a major leap this year. And I do think Nico Collins is that wide receiver 1 because he did so well with CJ Stroud last year. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see a video that's going to prevent you from wasting picks in your 2024 redraft league, click on this video right here.